Yo, what's up? We're now sitting in an ID bus and I'm doing a Sunday driving right now. And yes, we're gonna have another 4K podcast. So this topic today is going to be about the yoke wheel and the stalkless design, but also in general about ergonomics. Okay, I touched into this topic before, and why didn't I talk about it while I was driving the Plaid? Well, because now I have more interesting insight to come with, and also now I can focus on the talk rather than the driving, because it's kind of brainless driving, just doing the test here. This is considered an eco run for the bus. But over to today's topic. Let's start with the Plaid, or I mean, well, people mostly call it Plaid, but it's the Palladium, the latest generation Model S, Tesla Model S, with a yoke wheel. I mean, why is the yoke wheel so bad for many? Well, the problem with the yoke wheel in Tesla is that they didn't engineer it properly. It doesn't have progressive steering. If you look at Toyota and Lexus, they have, okay, Toyota, the BZ4X is supposed to have it, but they don't have it yet, but at least the Lexus, that is the same with I mean, they use the same drivetrain as the Toyota. That one does have a yoke wheel, but it has progressive steering. And what does it mean? Well, it means that the steering is not mechanically connected to the wheels. There's just some stuff in between there. And on the motorway, for example, here, when you turn the wheel slightly, it's not going to cause crazy movement. But then when you have way lower speed at the parking lot, when you turn the wheel, then you will turn more. And I think ideally, if your maximum turning angle is 90 degrees or something like that, right? A little bit over 90 degrees to do a full turn at the parking lot, then yoke wheel will actually work great, because then you don't have to rotate the yoke too much in order to do something. But I think yoke initially was designed for an airplane, not a car. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the start, when people started designing cars, you know, not the ones that Ford designed, but the first generation cars who had a round steering wheel, they never thought about making a yoke wheel from the beginning. And the reason why we have some yokes here and there is probably because of it wants it to look cool. But then, okay, we're going to also touch into F1. Yeah, for F1, correct me if I'm wrong, but for F1 drivers, you probably don't have to go more than 180 degrees, right? Or maybe not. I'm not sure how that stuff works, but you don't need to parallel park an F1 car. I think you can't even back up an F1 car. So F1 cars, they are designed for that purpose, for racing, and you want to see, you don't want to have a steering wheel interfering with the vision. Yeah, another thing I've seen a picture is that I didn't know that F1 drivers, they don't sit upright, because those F1 cars are freaking low. So F1 drivers, they're actually like, they are laying down quite low, quite flat, quite like, imagine if you're laying down on a business class seat or some shit like that, you know. That's usually how low they sit and drive, and that means that a round steering wheel is going to block your vision or interfere with that. So yoke wheel on an F1 car has a purpose. Yoke wheel on an airplane probably also has a purpose. That's why they are like that. And then also airplanes, they don't have to do any crazy maneuvers at the parking lot. Normally they'll be flying. But cars, they have different tasks they need to do, you know, roundabouts, parking lots, backing up or getting out of driveways and shit. So strictly speaking, a car steering wheel should be round, not yoke. But if you go for a yoke, like some car manufacturers tend to do, then you need to have progressive steering to counter for the disadvantages. And then, yeah. So what was the problem with Tesla then? Well, because Tesla is not progressive steering. They just slapped down the yoke wheel there without thinking about ergonomics. And this video will also be a lot of talk about ergonomics, because if you look at if you look at Tesla Model X, the Falcon wing doors, you know, the reason why the Falcon wing doors are not a complete disaster is because Tesla put a lot of effort, and they put lots of engineers and engineering time to make the Falcon wing doors double hinged. It's not a gull wing door technically, or I mean, when you call it gull wing door, it usually means a stiff door that has only one hinge connected to the car. And the problem is that when you open the gull wing door, you need a lot of space on the side. It's gonna boom, you know. But Falcon wing doors, they have double hinge, and they open like a falcon or something. Inspired by nature, and by having double hinge, you can then open on tight spaces and close on tight spaces. So I wouldn't say the Model X is a success, but at least it's not a total failure. Issues with the Falcon wing doors is another problem, but at least from an ergonomic perspective, the Falcon wing doors work great, simply because they were engineered well, you know. But yoke wheel in a Tesla was not engineered well, or the ergonomics part of that yoke wheel is not good, and that's why the yoke wheel in a Tesla is not good. That's my claim, right? And then who the heck is this idiot, this half Norwegian, half German dude, you know, half Thai, half whatever. What the heck? What man? Freaking Norwegian left lane huggers, dude. Move over to the right lane. Jesus, man. Oh, there. Okay. But yeah, who is this dude? Well, I have background in computer engineering. I have background in web design, in programming, database design, a bachelor degree in computers. Have 12 years of experience with working at office with programming and web user interface. It's that book I read. What the heck is that called again? There was a book about usability. Maybe some of you guys can mention it. Long time ago, but so you know, I'm becoming an old fart now with lots of experience, and my claims is based on my life experience with testing cars, with my computer background, with gaming also. So when I read comments or hear about people bitching about, oh, Bjørn, you know, he doesn't want to adapt, he's old-fashioned, he's stubborn and stuff. No, it's all, hear me out, noobs. You know, before you guys spew out less intelligent comments and not knowing the whole story, just hear me out. It's all about ergonomics. Because let's just, finish the talk about yoke now. Now let's talk about stockless design. Tesla removed the stalks. Why did they do that? Was it to improve ergonomics? No. Was it to save cost? Most likely, yes. The problem is that the stalks, they serve a very well purpose. The stalks stay at the same position all the time. You know, I just remember this. You know, some cars, they have the flappy pedals, or what they call it, the one on the steering wheel. But you can originally it was designed for changing gears on the fossil cars. So many fancy cars, racing cars, whatever. And by the way, it comes from F1. Yeah, many things derive from F1 because it's cool. It's the top of the crop. It's the fastest shit. And then you want to feel cool. You want to feel different. You put that in a car, in a regular car, passenger car. But for F1 driver again, you don't need to let go. You don't have to do a crazy 360-degree turn with your steering wheel. So your left and right hand will always be on the flappy pedal, ready for changing gear. But on a passenger car, it's different. Sometimes the steering wheel might be upside down, or if you are in a hairpin turn, for example. Yeah, that's a prime example. You're in a hairpin turn, and then you figure that you want to decrease or increase regen. Yeah, I forgot to mention. So the flappy pedals were originally made for changing gear, but in a fossil car, they'd be like, Scheisse, what do we do here? We have this part, we are converting this this fossil car to an electro auto, they'll be like, you just make it change regen then. Okay, yeah. But if you're in a hairpin turn and you want to increase or decrease regen suddenly, then the steering wheel is upside down, and can your brain wrap around it and figure out that you have to then use the right flappy pedal to do what you want, right? It can be hard to do that initially, especially if you're not doing that very often. And my point is that the flappy pedal then, well, it's hard, because where should you place the flappy pedal on the steering column so it has a fixed position? Yeah, that is better, but then you're losing the part where you can flap it. I mean, where you can flick it while your steering wheel is at 90 degrees. So the problem with the flappy pedal is that it has its advantages and disadvantages by placing it wherever we're talking about now. And then comes the blinkers. Well, fortunately, your body is at the same position all the time, even though the steering wheel might be in a different position and your hand might be slightly in a different position. But even if you're at a 90-degree turn, you can still reach and hit the indicator or the turn signal stalk or the gear stalk that many cars tend to have now. Even this ID bus also has the gear stalk on the right stalk, which I find very nice and ergonomic. So since we're talking about ergonomics, why do I think that gear stalk should be there, like a Tesla or a Mercedes, or also ID3, ID4 and i3? Well, because your right hand is already right there, right by the gear stalk, and it makes a very small move. You just require a very small movement to change gear, and once you've gotten used to it in a Tesla or a Mercedes, it becomes super convenient, super nimble to change gear while you're doing a parking maneuver, instead of having it in the center console or something. For mechanical reasons, yeah, in the past when you had stick shift, manual gearbox, then yeah, you need to reach down there to change gear. But of course, some American cars, they already had the stick shift. The stick shift on the steering column. Yeah, okay. But money to save part or whatever, right? To simplify things, cut cost. Traditionally, stick shift gears and stick shift cars, they will have it down in the center console, and you gotten used to it. Yeah, true, but it's way more economic to have it right near the steering wheel, you know. But okay, back to the blinkers then. So my claim is that having it there is better. But okay, you can swipe the screen. That's what Tesla forces you to do. It's still fairly close, even though I'm not a fan of it. But yeah, you can get used to swiping on the screen. Still closer than having to reach your hand over to the middle console. But the blinker becomes a problem, because when the steering wheel moves and you want to blink, then the blinker will be in a different position because it's on the freaking steering wheel. And one thing, when we talk about ergonomics again, the traditional blinker, the way it works is that you have to push the blinker up to blink right and then push it down to blink left. That is not intuitive. Wait, maybe I should hang on. Okay, no. So it's not intuitive at all to have it like that, but we have gotten used to it, just like we have gotten used to clutch. A clutch is also not intuitive at all, that you have to push the clutch and it will change the behavior of the car. But when you push the brake or push the accelerator, it does something different. But over time you learn with the muscle memory how that shit works, and the same with the blinker. So if Tesla wants to make it more intuitive, the left blinker should be on the left side of the steering wheel and the right blinker should be on the right side of the steering wheel. But because we are used to the blinker, the traditional blinker movement, then they try to mimic that one as close as possible. So But like I said, the problem again about ergonomics is that the blinker, not only does it change position because it moves with the steering wheel, but you put more operation on one finger. So let me explain here. I used to play Doom a lot. That was probably over 20 years ago. And in the beginning, you know, Doom, you have buttons for moving forward, backwards, but you also have the strafing to move sideways. And that is to avoid rockets and grenades hitting you in the face. So a good Doom player or any FPS player will strafe. In the early days, people didn't learn how to strafe and they would get killed all the time. But once you learn how to strafe in Doom, you could dominate your friends. That's what I did. But it doesn't just stop there. It's all about ergonomics, because in the heat of the battle, when you're fighting and trying to dodge your buddy, but also trying to hit them, fire at them, you need to have good control over the keys. And it's about balancing load between your fingers, because you only have 10 fingers and you want to utilize them, but you want to do it in a very ergonomic way. So I have, back then, when I lived in Bodø and I was gaming, I changed the configuration on Doom. Actually, the default configuration is that when you move, okay, because Doom, how is it again? Okay, Doom is, I mean, it's 3D, but it's not really 3D. It's like a fake 3D. A map on Doom, supposedly you can have overlapping, but the map is actually flat, and you have the sense of height and shit like that. Yes, but how they put this? When you aim for something, you can't aim up and down. But traditionally in Doom, when you move your mouse up, you go forward, and something like that. There was a weird, I don't know how was this again? Let me see if I get the story right. Yeah, I think it was something like that. So I even configured, I had to use a DOS program to change the setting on the mouse so that I then minimize the movement forward and backward on the mouse. So if you move the mouse a lot up, it only went forward a little bit, and then the same backwards. And then I changed it so that I would actually use the right mouse key to go forward. It sounds crazy, right? And then I use one key on my left finger to go backwards. And then I would have my index finger and the long finger to strafe. So I would strafe left and right. My idea, and then I would also eventually use the space for jumping, and then you use the thumb for space. So what am I saying? I mean, it has a purpose. What I'm saying now is that I then distributed the load on my fingers, and I can then do more operations. I can then do more complex movements where the fingers are not interfering with each other, because the more traditional way of setting up movement in games like that would be you don't have like the arrow key configuration. You then use 3 fingers to either go forward, backwards, left or right. But I would then assign buttons for changing weapon and other stuff. I don't remember all the... Eventually I started playing Unreal Tournament, which is pure real 3D, and so on. But the whole point is that each finger will have to have less operations to do, possible operations to do. And by doing that, once I reconfigure my Doom configuration and I started learning, I had to play for hours to get used to it. My Polish friend who used to beat me on Doom, I kept beating him over and over again. He couldn't beat me suddenly. Okay, sometimes he might beat me, but like, it would be like something like 10-to-1 ratio, right? The way I would beat him. So that was the strength of ergonomics and how to think about things, And back to the point with the stalkers, with the blinker. If you think about this, if you know the layout with the plaid, they force you to use the thumb on the left thumb for blinking, but also for changing music and volume and next previous song. And then they force you to use the right thumb for enabling and disable autopilot and changing speed and eventually, hopefully, also changing distance, because you can, but also for enabling auto high beam. I'm sorry, for putting on high beam or use the flasher, but also for using the horn. Well, at least until they got the horn in the middle, finally. So you see, the problem is that each thumb needs to do so many operations. And the problem also, talking about ergonomics again, is that I struggle at night when I want to manually turn on the high beam. You can say, why don't you use automatic high beam? Yeah, you can, but I have a point here, is that at night, reaching the high beam button is hard because it's very close to the horn and close to some other buttons, I don't remember. So there is very little difference where you're supposed to press, right? But when you have it on a stalk, it's a completely different motion. It's a completely different finger that will do that operation. So it's then almost impossible to press or do something by mistake. So that's what I mean, that the ergonomics of that yoke wheel or even the round steering wheel is bad, because you force the user into many operations in one finger. So I don't know, man. Does it make sense? I'm trying to explain as deeply as possible now the problem, why I think stalks should come back, and also using autopilot, enabling autopilot with the scroll wheel is bad. It was brilliant with the stalk, actually, the gear stalk. And you can also, now we talk about overloading functions. The gear selector, you have you can, in the Tesla, in the Model Y or Model 3, for example, you push the stalk down to go in drive, and then you push the stalk up to go in reverse, and then you push the button to go in park, fine. But as long as you're driving, then you can actually overload more functions. You can double tap on it to go into autopilot. It's brilliant. It's freaking brilliant, man. And once you learn it, it's but you can say, it's unlogic. Well, have you ever thought about this? When you use a mouse, sometimes you right click, sometimes you left click, sometimes you click and hold, sometimes you double click, you overload several functions into the same button. But once you learn how to use a mouse, it's brilliant. And everything is, again, I talk about ergonomics. When you have a scroll wheel on a mouse and you scroll up and down for precision scrolling, but if you scroll fast, or some mouses also allows you to free roll, right? Then you scroll really fast down a lot, so that you don't have to use page up, page down, for example. So it's all about ergonomics and gestures. And once you get used to all those things, it becomes very convenient and fast. And again, I can talk about the keyboard, the QWERTY keyboard. The reason why it's a QWERTY keyboard is because it fits the languages you normally use QWERTY keyboard on. And if you can perfect touch method or typing, you can write really fast without having to have some predictive, without having some predictive text, whatever, like you have in a phone, because on the phone you are limited to how many keys you can push, right? But yeah, you can type almost anything. Like the signs you see there, just past there, words that you normally don't type, you can type it perfectly fine with good precision on the QWERTY keyboard because of ergonomics. And also the mouse, by the way. Speaking of ergonomics, a mouse is very intuitive because when you move the mouse up, the screen mimics that motion, and when you move it down, you go down, right? But a trackpad on a Lenovo, for example, or some laptops, they have a trackpad. I'm used to the trackpad. I'm a sucker for trackpads. There's a joystick, and when you push the joystick up, then the cursor goes up, and then if you push the cursor harder, then the cursor goes faster up. It is not intuitive, but I like that one, and I've gotten used to it. And then I use the thumb for clicking left or right click on the cursor. But the same for, since we're speaking about ergonomics, the same goes for one pedal driving. We touched about that. clutch and brake, right? So when you have one pedal driving and regen, it is actually very intuitive, because when you push the accelerator forward, you have the forward motion, the car goes faster. But if you let off a bit, then it slows down a bit. And if you let off more, then suddenly you started regenning, and you have negative torque, right? Or you decelerate. So once I got used to EV's pedal, I realized it's very intuitive. The brake is actually slightly counterintuitive, because you have one motion pushing the feet forward to accelerate, but then you have to push another pedal to decelerate, and the further you push it, but you've gotten used to it. It's muscle memory, so you understand how brake and accelerator works. And then the third one is the clutch. The clutch is, I don't know if I should explain it, but you guys know how the clutch works. But the clutch, for someone, an 18-year-old or 16-year-old who has never driven before, having to deal with, or having to get used to a brake pedal, I mean, they already know some of that. I mean, humans are brilliant, because they already know brake pedal from a bicycle, and they know that if you push, you squeeze the brake pedal on a bicycle, you brake. So in a way, yeah, they can then relate to the same brake pedal in a car and get used to it. But having to deal with the clutch, it makes driving actually a lot harder. You have to focus on traffic rules, yielding rules, pedestrians, all that stuff, wheel movement, and also need to deal with RPM, uphill, downhill, and whether you should shift gear or not, and also clutch. So it's hard, but people can learn anything and get used to anything. So, but that doesn't mean that it's a good design, right, or good ergonomics. So, for example, I watched a video about arrow keys. There's a video about arrow keys on the keyboard. There was actually many different variants of arrow keys, and the way arrow keys work today is that they have like a triangle, up, down, left, right, and as long as you learn how to use the arrow keys, it becomes quite fast and ergonomic to use it. But arrow keys were actually designed differently for many years, and I think it might even still exist. Some places you might have to hold down some function key to change, to alternate between or multiplex between different operations if you wanted to go left or right, up and down. I don't remember how it was, but yeah. Again, back to ergonomics, that if you design stuff to be intuitive and ergonomic, it will be easier to operate it. And the same goes for the car, the steering wheel. And I should mention another example. What was it again? Man, I had it here, man. Sorry, I don't have a script. This is the whole beauty of my chat. Is the talk is not. Man, we'll talk about ergonomics. We'll go there. I will probably remember. Yeah. It's about zooming and pinching. I still see this sometimes when I test some cars, but most modern cars nowadays, you can do the pinch zoom. It's very intuitive. The pinch zoom, at least the swipe. Okay, when you, what do you call it, pan, right? When you in the map, Google Maps, for example, you swipe up on the screen to then move the whole. You go down on the map, right? Or you pan down. You go further south in the map, and then you swipe down on the map to move further north. And it is very intuitive, because it is like having a piece of paper on the table, and then by doing the same motion, you then move. You get the same physical motion there versus what happens on the screen. So that is intuitive. But every time I'm in a Korean car, the motion is opposite. So when I swipe up on the screen, I go north. And the pinch zoom, I think, well, you can't pinch zoom in real life, but at least the motion is quite intuitive and easier to understand, and easier to, once you learn it, it's quite ergonomic rather than having to, well, how else would you do it with 2 fingers, right? You can maybe double tap to zoom in, and then how do you zoom out? Triple tap? No, but it's not as quick as pinching, because pinching is brilliant since you can vary the angle of the pin, or you can pinch fast and slow to zoom in fast and slow. So yeah, it's all about ergonomics. So back to the whole, yeah, some people claim that they love the yoke wheel, it's fine. Yeah, true, I mean, it's fine. Just like you can always live with arrow keys that has a function key for overloading it if you want to go up and down or some shit like that. Or you can live with the Microsoft ergonomic keyboard or some shit like that. You know, the one that doesn't look, that the keyboard is not straight, it's bent a little bit, it has an angle, you know? Yeah, you can always get used to everything, right? I can get used to a trackpad, but I know that the touchpad where you swipe and stuff like that, and I can actually do pin zoom and scrolling on the touchpad. It is better, it is superior to the trackpad. Trackpad cannot do many of those operations, and you can use three fingers or 2 fingers, and you can do lots of cool stuff with a trackpad. But I just like the what do you call it, the joystick on my Lenovo. But I admit that it's not the best solution. But yeah, and the same thing goes for the yoke wheel in Tesla. It's not optimal, but you can always get used to it. Yeah, but it's not optimal. It would be slightly better if they had progressive steering. And but also when it comes to the turn signal, the stalkless design, it is not optimal at all, the way it works. Humans, we have lots of motions we can do. We can do the blinker motion, no problem. You take that away, that option, and you force the user to use the thumb for all the operations. So it's bad. It is bad. That is my claim. You know, I'm not just some high school noob saying this. Like I said initially, this is based on many years, decades of experience from the computer world and from testing so many different cars that I claim all this stuff. So yeah, what else should I say? I mean, oh yeah, another thing I should mention, since someone mentioned this earlier, single screen. Yeah, there was one hater in my channel. By the way, he claimed that I'm very conservative. I was like, huh? I'm like the least conservative EV reviewer out there, man, bro. He's just a noob. But so he claims that you know I was conservative when it came to the single screen in the Tesla. Yeah, in the beginning I didn't like it. But that was before I tried it. And many people, they have the same opinion as me. They don't like the single screen. They want the instrument cluster. Yeah, okay, fine. But why? You know? Because head-up display is good. Yeah, it is good. I understand that. I use many cars with head-up display. I agree with people when they say that head-up display is better for safety, because you have information right on the road or in your vision, so you don't have to move your eyes too much to see it. Okay, if that is an argument that reducing eye movement increases safety, then how can instrument cluster be safe? Right? We're like, huh? What do you mean? Well, listen, when you have one screen like in a Tesla, every time you look at the speed or something, you move your eyes from the road down to the screen, and the screen is not that low. Some cars, they have a freaking touchscreen way too low, but Tesla screen is fairly high up. You know, there was even one guy who was pulled over because the police thought he was using an iPad. That's how high up the screen is. So you only need to move your eyes away from the road for a little bit, down to the main screen, and there place it ergonomically close to your eyesight or your vision where you're supposed to be. So it's mirrored on the cars in Thailand, for example, where they drive on the wrong side of the road, in the UK. But then your eyes need minimal movement. You move over there to look at speed or whatever you want to see, driving settings, right? But if you're looking at navigation or other things, radio or some shit, you already have that right next to that because it's on the same screen. So then you don't have to move your eyes too much. And I noticed this when I was in a Tesla, that I just had to move my eyes a little bit back and forth, no problem. And then But in other cars like this ID Bus, I have to look at some information on the instrument cluster, and then I have to move my eyes over to the main screen to see something else. And then I have to move again over to the main screen. So if the argument for head-up display is that you want to minimize eye movement, then you should actually remove instrument cluster and put a bigger screen there, and just place it as close as possible. Place it as far left as possible without the steering wheel blocking the vision, of course. It will look a little bit weird to have the main screen like that, but my claim is that one plus head-up display is the best ergonomics. I mean, if I would design the perfect car for ergonomics, it will have stalks where you change gear and you change you enable and disable cruise control and on whatever on the gear stalk, just like a Model 3. You have horn in the middle of the steering wheel. You have blinker stalk like you know it, with other stuff there. You could be like, this one has some wiper stuff on the blinker stalk, that's fine. And some, also the headlight, the high beam stalk should also be on that side. And no instrument cluster, but head-up display. Yeah. You have to try a Model 3 or Model Y in order to understand how brilliant it is. And think about this. Lots of people complain about the horn in the Palladium not being on the horn place, but on a freaking button. And why do you think Tesla changed it so that Highland suddenly has the horn in the middle of the steering wheel again? I think they realized they made a mistake. And why the heck did they even offer a round steering wheel if there was no other option, right? I think it's just because they realized that too many people, like, how to put this, many people don't want that one solution they had, which was yoke. And the same goes for the big screen in Tesla. They only offer one screen for Model 3, Model Y. But you guys probably know this, right? Model Y sold out Model Y crushed all the competitors all over the world. Sold like hotcakes. So if so many people can buy Model Y and Model 3 also, without complaining too much about having one screen, that it bothers them and it makes it unsafe or whatever that some people will claim, you know, it must mean that one screen is good enough, or maybe even better for safety and ergonomics than having two screens. That's my claim. And I'm not always defending Tesla because of that's one screen solution. Because look, I'm actually not defending Tesla when it comes to yoke and the stalkless design, because I believe in my own experience and I have my own opinions. You are of course allowed to have your own opinions about things, but please, guys, try to keep personal attack out of this, right? Because I base my claims on lots of experience and actually well-known knowledge about ergonomics and stuff like that. And if you have other opinions, then fine. But my claim is that having blinker on the steering wheel is bad, and it's bad ergonomics. But having single screen is actually good, and also having a big screen is also good. And I still don't understand why car manufacturers don't make the screens larger, because screen cost is not an issue today anymore. Because you can design the user interface to be very intuitive and fast and easy to use and so on if you have bigger screen. Some people, of course, they always want physical buttons. Yeah, true, but I've been in some cars with lots of physical buttons, and at one point it becomes confusing, and I still need to look down there in the middle console. Yeah, okay. Speaking of ergonomics and safety, how safe is it that I have to look down in the middle console to find that driving mode button, or that whatever button that I need to use, right, while I'm driving, versus having it on the screen or somewhere else, easier accessible. Some of those buttons are even physical buttons that you cannot have any software stuff on it. I don't remember, like some seat heaters. I don't remember, man. There's some physical button that has a state. When you have that state set there, you cannot set it somewhere else, right? You know what I mean? Because yeah, you can of course solve this by using voice control or something, but voice control is not the only solution. Might not be the best solution. For example, some people say, "Oh, why don't you have voice control for turn signal?" That's not gonna work, buddy. But also sometimes, like even in a Tesla, when you have to press a button to open the glove box, you have to press a button on the screen to open the glove box. Yeah. I find myself sometimes using voice control to open the glove box because otherwise I have to go into there, click. But it should be easier, or at least Tesla should have a roll down, like what do you call it, a swipe down menu, and you can then if you open the glove box often, then you can customize swipe down hotkey then. But the way it works today is that you have to dig into the menu to find the glove box opening thing. It's clumsy. And speaking of ergonomics, by the way, at one point Tesla stopped using colors in the interface. I disagree with that decision, because I've been living with Tesla for 10 years, you know. Back in the days, they would have colors for the different icons, for navigation, for music, for whatever. And colors, man, they are a very strong visual effect. Just think about this. Why do we have red light and green light? Because colors, they work so well that danger signs, they are in red, and information signs are in blue, and green is maybe for some other stuff, right? Whatever. So colors they have a very strong effect. But then Tesla got rid of the colors, and they just have everything is just gray in the user interface. They want to make it clean, fine, but it's not as ergonomic as having colors on the icons anymore. And that's my struggle. I use Tesla a lot. I'm not a Tesla noob. I use Tesla a lot, but every time I try to open the gear, open the glove box, it takes a couple of seconds to find that icon for opening it. But having a physical button like here, this one is better. Why? Because the button is right where the glove box is. Just like having, you know, a door handle where it should be, right? Rather than having it somewhere else. It's ergonomic, it's intuitive to have it there, but in a cost-cutting perspective, as long as you don't use the glove box that often, then you can hide it somewhere. But then with smart engineering, again, like I mentioned with Falcon wing doors or progressive steering, you can take stuff, change it, but as long as you design it well and have a swipe down with customizable hotkeys with colors there to make it easier to distinguish between different buttons, then that is good enough. Like in a Tesla has so big screen, and the HVAC settings for, you know, climate control and whatever, it's always visible on the bottom, and no matter what you do, or I think almost without exception, you can always adjust the most used climate controls at the bottom of the screen. And the same thing goes for on a phone. You design the user interface on the phone so that it's easy to operate, and that would be good enough. So you actually don't need to have physical buttons for climate control. And for the most time, I keep the climate control on automatic, because then it will just defog and adjust the temperature for me. And then sometimes I need to just adjust the temperature up and down, but no problem. You just press on the bottom of the screen. You don't need physical buttons for that. So, I mean, it's a long speech about ergonomics and and logic and common sense. Okay, now we're at Gjøvik. What is consumption, by the way, for the guys in the live stream is 170 watt-hour per kilometer. So this car will not go 500 kilometers. It will go around 450 kilometers then. So it's always interesting, and What was I going to say again? Yeah, I can tell you that. I mean, some things, yeah. I remember in the old days, Tesla used to have the range number in kilometers. Very well, very big in big font, fairly big fonts in the center of the screen, because range was very important. But then eventually they moved it down to a little battery icon down at the bottom. And initially I didn't like it. I remember I was bitching about it. I was like, huh? Why did they move it down there, man? I'm struggling to find it every time now. I'm always looking at the center of the screen, but they freed up more space there in the center of the screen for something else. And over time, I learned to get used to the smaller display or the smaller range number at the bottom. So, what was my point again? It's all about ergonomics, but also it's also about how important is that information. Because I've gotten used to it back then, yeah, that the range number was in big letters. But over time, I found out that, okay, you can actually live with just a smaller letter on the bottom, and it's not going to affect my driving ergonomics or the way I operate the car. Yeah. And also when it comes to percent versus kilometer, but that's probably a different story. That nowadays I'm leaning more and more towards percent rather than kilometer on the display. Or I mean, it's nice to have kilometer. You should actually have both. Like this car, yeah, this ID bus shows you both a state of charge. I have 75% and I have 329 kilometers. It is very useful to have both. Some people claim that you only need to know percent, not kilometer. I disagree, because road signs are in kilometer. If you look on the map, they are displayed in kilometer. You know, you use kilometers everywhere. So it makes sense to also display how many kilometers the car thinks it can drive. But it also makes sense to know how many percent battery we have, because when we are charging the car on the charger, a fast charger, it shows percent. It doesn't show you kilometer there. So the kilometer, the percent is just a higher precision of displaying if something is full or quarter full or half full or whatever. So it's just, yeah, a very precise way of knowing a scale, how much on the scale you are, right? So yeah, but of course with modern cars or sophisticated cars like Tesla, when you navigate somewhere, you can then see how many percent you have left. Where does it display how many kilometers you have left? No, NIO will do something weird. If you navigate somewhere, NIO will display how many kilometers of range you have left at the destination, but it doesn't show you how many percent you have. But you can calculate that because they use a fixed, they don't use a GOM based kilometer thing, but it's then you have to become a freaking ninja in math. But yeah, so a little bit of talk about ergonomics and logic and how things should be, and that at least I claim that an EV should show percent on the display. But many car manufacturers in the beginning, they didn't show that. Just look at PSA cars. I think even nowadays, PSA Stellantis cars, many of them don't show you percent of the battery. It just shows you whether you're full or half full or whatever. But let me ask you guys, how many of you guys show percent on your phone? Some people just don't show percent on your phone, but I can bet 99% of my viewers, they want to show how many percent your phone is at. And why is that important? Why can't you just see, why can't the phone show you how many minutes of screen time you have left, or how many minutes of operation time you have left, right? Because people want to know percent. It's just a thing that we've gotten used to. We want to know how much it is precisely left. So, but because, I don't know, maybe because of my claims that, yeah, it was funny, man, since I'm sitting in the ID bus, in the beginning, the ID3 did not show you how many percent it had, but once the state of charge dropped below 10%, then suddenly you start seeing state of charge in the instrument cluster. So, which means that the argument that, oh, there's not enough screen space to show percent. Well, obviously there is enough screen space, but they changed it. So now you can see percentage all the time. But it should mean that my claim was true then, right? That it's better for your peace of mind and for your ergonomics to do it like I claim it is. So then the question is, well, so when I have my claims about stockless design and yoke wheel, is that just me being an old fart, refusing to adapt to something new and better, supposedly? Or is my claims true, right? Or, you know, but yeah. But anyway, I think this is a long enough video. How long is it? Yeah, it's freaking long, man. So, I'm not sure what else I should say. Yeah, we can. One other thing we can talk about. Very important, interesting. Start/stop button. Since we already touched into that in the live stream, do we actually need a start/stop button for a fossil car? It makes sense to have a start/stop button because, I mean, traditionally there would be this key you slide into the ignition and then you twist it. Traditionally it was like that, and you start the engine. And for fossil cars, it makes sense to start the engine because you want to have control over that engine. And if you run 12 volt stuff like music or whatever, you might the battery might go flat because those cars are not very sophisticated. They need a so-called alternator. Yeah, well, the reason why I explain this is that this video might be viewed in 10 years, and people in 10 years, that generation might not know what the heck I'm talking about. But fossil cars have an alternator that will charge a 12 volt battery. And if you're just on, you will see the battery icon, but there's a red battery icon. Wait, why the heck is it red? Why don't battery icons just be white? Huh? And what about high beam? The high beam, the high beam indicator is always blue, and the low beam is green. Wait, why is it like that? And why is the Tesla user interface flat and gray without any colors? Huh? Shit, man. Hope Tesla is listening. Bring back the colors in the user interface. It makes it easier, better ergonomics. It might not look as pretty, but was the instrument cluster a place where things are supposed to be pretty? Huh? Okay, anyway, what was the point again? Yeah. So with a fossil car, it makes sense to have the ignition, and eventually they went over to a start/stop button instead. And it makes sense, yeah, to have a start/stop button. But in an electric car, you don't need it, because what does it do when you start the button? You start the engine. This engine starts spinning, and actually it's consuming roughly 0.7 liters per hour, which is insane, man. It pulls freaking 7 kilowatt of energy just to idle. Actually, when it's idling, when it's cold, it's pulling way more, maybe twice that amount, because it then needs to heat up the engine. Yeah, it's crazy, man, that the engine has lower efficiency when it's cold until you heat it up. But okay, whatever, that will be a different discussion. But okay, my point is that in a fossil car, it makes sense to start the engine first before you start driving, when you kind of need to do that. And then you put the car in gear, and then there's some lots of mechanical stuff happens, and then the car starts rolling. But in an electric car, technically, when you say start engine, we had talked about this before, there is no engine in an electric car. Electric cars, they have motors, they don't have an engine, right? But it will still be logically or grammatically wrong to say start motor, because then the motor will be spinning at some low RPM, and then you have to put it in gear with a clutch and start driving. So yeah, but then for example Porsche Taycan has just a power thing, a power button. Let me see, what does it look like here? This one says start, stop, wait, I can't see, wait, how? I'm gonna look in the, it says, what, this one says, shit! Freaking Volkswagen, it says start, stop. Well, actually, the letter says, okay, if you read it top to down, left to right, it will say start, engine, stop. Wait, or does it say engine, start, stop? Or does it say start, stop, engine? No, it says start, engine, stop. But technically, I mean, if you want to be, if you want to argue, you can say that, I want to return this car because when I press the start engine, the engine did not spin around. It starts spinning around once I put the car in drive. It's misleading, you know, if you want to be querulant. But electric cars don't need a start-stop button, because just do it like Tesla, like Neo, like I don't remember, but like Maxus Mifa. You enter the car, the infotainment comes up. You can say, well, but sometimes you want to enter the car without firing up the main screen. Well, but is it a big deal that you fire up the main screen? No, it just takes a little bit of 12 volt. That's it. So once you enter the car, there is a 99.9% chance that you want to do something there, whether it's start driving or check something or listen to music. There is very few cases where you just want to enter the car to pick up the potato you forgot in there. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But do we have to take care of that? I mean, do we have to design the car for corner cases? No. Or I mean, do we have to make compromises just for very few corner cases? No. So, but then when you start driving, you just press the brake and then put the car in gear and you start driving. So it works great. And saving that button means cost cutting. Like, you know what? I don't even many times I don't even notice in the. Oh shit! I pressed the button for fun. Yeah. Oh shit! Ignition switch. Oh shit! What the heck, man? I managed to switch off the ignition while driving. What the freaking shit was that? Oh shit! Okay. I'm driving. What? Is that even possible? Shit, man. There was no foolproof system. Holy shit, man. That was scary. You can power off the so-called ignition. It was saying in the, what the heck are you trying to ignite here? The battery? No, but it was saying in the screen, ignition switch off. It should, no, dude, Volkswagen, if you're listening, fix that shit. Don't allow the driver to be cruising at 80 kilometers per hour and switch off the ignition. That could be potential dangers if you're clumsy, if you press it by accident or shit like that. Oh shit, man. Okay. No. But you know, if you try to, I've tried this before with my Laguna. I tried to stop the car. I think I tried to push the stop button while driving, and nothing happens. Fortunately, unlike this Volkswagen. No, but you don't need that button. You know, what I was saying is that when I'm using these ID cars, ID bus or ID3, ID4, I never use that start-stop button, because when you enter the car, the screen already fires up, and then when I leave the car and I lock it, the car stops and stops everything. So that one is just for, I don't know, a corner case when you need to fire up manually or stop it manually while you're driving. So there's really no need to have a power button there. Yeah. And then some people argue, yeah, but it's nice to have it there. No, I mean, just listen to my arguments. There is no need to have it there. It brings the cost up. It brings the complexity up. And as long as you design the car well, like a Tesla, no problem. Like, if you ask any Tesla driver, have you ever wanted to have a power button on your Tesla? They'd be like, huh? No, why? You would say, but you know, sometimes if you want to idle so you can keep the heater on, if you're waiting in traffic, or if you want to camp, you want to sleep in the car. Well, guess what? Tesla already solved that long time ago with camper mode. You want to put your wife in there? Use doggy style mode. Like I said, as long as you design the car and the system for it, just like I mentioned with the yoke wheel and the progressive steering and the Falcon wing doors, as long as you design it well, then you can leave out some buttons or whatever. But for that one, by the way, yeah. So for that one, but Bjørn, you're a hypocrite, because you say it's fine to remove the start-stop button, but you say it's not fine to remove the blinker stalk. Well, did you listen to what I said for the past hour? Huh? Are you listening to the words that come out of my mouth? Okay, anyway, but you know, okay, since we talk about the start-stop button, this got me thinking. Can you actually remove the start-stop button in a fossil car? I think you can. Are you a Thai can or a Thai can't? You're a Thai can, yeah. You can remove the start button on the fossil car. Because fossil cars nowadays, they're so modern, they have an electronic starter and all that. Well, so you can remove it. And also many fossil cars nowadays, they're plug-in hybrid. They have a battery and shit like that. So hear me out. If you enter a fossil car, Do you need to fire up the engine? Well, technically no. Okay, let's do it like this then. You can, if you enter a fossil car and you push the brake, regardless if this is a stick shift or automatic gearbox, by pushing the brake in a fossil car, you can then start the engine. That is my claim. You can do that. Okay, you can maybe you can override. You have to do an extra thing. Maybe push that one and then something else, clutch and brake or something for a stick shift to start the engine, so you don't accidentally start the engine. But it's no big deal if you actually then accidentally start the engine, I think. But they should have a start-stop system so that after 1 minute it stops the engine again, cuts the engine. But if you're entering a fossil car to use the navigation or something, or just to sit there and do nothing, then no problem, right? But my claim is that once you enter a fossil car, the infotainment should automatically fire up. It will suck a little bit of 12 volt, but no big deal. If you don't start driving within a couple of minutes, or let's say, I don't know, depends how much the system is sucking, of course, but it should only run the minimum infotainment stuff, which shouldn't pull that many watts. But because you don't want to drain the 12 volt battery. Those fossil cars are not very sophisticated. They don't have a DC-DC converter and all that. But like I said again, as long as you design the system well, then you can actually make some radical changes. So what you can actually do is that you enter the car, you push the brake, the engine spins up, you start the engine, and then once you put the car in gear, then normal operation goes just like a regular fossil car with a start-stop button. And then when you stop, yeah, but what about if you want to idle? Well, that's your problem, right? Because many places you are not allowed to idle. In Sweden, for example, you are only allowed to idle for 1 minute. And also, but they say, but you should heat up the engine. You should warm up the engine. Yeah, it's better. Yeah, oh, wow, that's funny, man. So what you're saying is that that fossil car is so old-fashioned, and it has so many disadvantages that you need to heat up the engine. No, okay, whatever, man. Modern fossil cars can start even when it's winter. You can start driving when the engine is cold. It doesn't take damage from it. But it's more like a convenience thing. Yeah, you want to heat up the coolant and the engine so you can get some leftover heat, so you can heat the cabin, because they are fundamentally inferior to electric cars. Electric cars, they have heat pump or other systems that can then preheat the whole car in nice temperature. But fossil cars, they need to rely on leftover heat from the engine. But it makes sense. If you want to put PTC heater or heat pump in a fossil car, it becomes more complex, more expensive. Are people willing to pay for that? No. Just like, are you willing to pay for the start-stop button? Well, if you can shave off 100 or 200 euros off the price and you have no start-stop button, would you go for it? Yeah, hell yeah. No, but that's my claim. You can actually design a fossil car without start-stop button. And okay, in the case where you need to keep the heat in there, right? Actually, by the way, start-stop cars with start-stop system, they already stop the engine while you're on a red light anyway. Did you ever notice that? But then they will fire up again if the coolant is too, I mean, if you suck too much heat from it and you need to keep warm in the cabin. So it will already cycle that one. And also same for hydrogen, for hybrid cars. I noticed that eventually once the leftover heat is gone, then the engine automatically fires up. I think also, yeah, and it also charges the 12 volt system. So, I mean, the system is already there. It has already been engineered and programmed and implemented in plug-in hybrids. You could even have you can just program this in a fossil car that in the case where you want to keep warm, you could just, there will be a button on the HVAC control, keep warm, and then the engine will cycle on and off to keep you warm, even if some kind of, I don't know, situation, it's winter, it's minus 20 degrees outside, you don't want to freeze, no problem. The car can provide you leftover heat because because it has 70% losses. The fossil car has 70% losses. There's plenty of leftover heat in the system you can get. Okay, anyway, it was a long chat about mainly the main topic is about ergonomics, but of course I used the clickbait about yoke wheel and stalkless stuff to get you guys hooked. Well, yeah, I think I'm just gonna end it here. I'm getting hungry. I wanna stop soon and pee and have some food, and we'll see. So yeah, I feel like this topic is not done. I might make a follow-up video where I talk more about ergonomics and stuff that I experience with the cars I test. I test so many cars. It's funny that when I read some, yeah, like it's, I don't want to brag too much, but sometimes I feel like I need to brag, simply because people don't know who I am. Don't you know who I am, huh? I'm just kidding, but because they make some stupid comments or false claims based on not knowing who I am. But when there is some kind of, you know, like when NAF, they have the biggest EV range test in the world. They drive 20, 30 cars together. They actually drive this route, by the way. And then they go up there, yeah. And you see all those car models, like BYD, Tesla, Mercedes, you know, all those cars. And when I look through the list of the cars they test, I'll be like, I've driven that one. I've tested that one. I tested all the variants of that one. I tested that one, the rear wheel drive, the front wheel drive. I've tested so many cars. I have no clue how many cars. You can look in the video description, look in the spreadsheet, and you can see the test result. I've tested so many cars. We're talking about hundreds. I never counted how many cars I've been in. It must have been over 999 by now. Yeah. And I've seen so much, and I've seen good and bad things. And I can mention, by the way, since we are in this ID bus, that the ID software, well, John Carmack is rolling around in his bed now. Shit, man! ID software, that's my invention. No, yeah, John Carmack, it's the guy who program stuff for Doom. But ID software user interface. First of all, the screen in the ID family is too small. Why didn't they make it bigger? You know? The user interface is clumsy. You have icons. Yeah, you enter, you go to the home button. Yeah, you have telephone, radio, media, navigation, vehicle. Those are icons. They have the same color, by the way. It's probably good for a visual impression. Yeah, it's beautiful in that regard, but it would be better to have different colors. Mercedes, they have different colors on the icons. I love it in the EQS or whatever, Mercedes. But in this ID, I can't show you guys the screen, but I can tell you that when you go to the home, whatever, you have 8 icons: telephone, radio, media, navigation, vehicle, whatever. When you enter one of those, for example, sound, if I click on sound, then the whole screen is filled with the sound settings, where you have focus setting, we have the volume, and you have another setting in the setting again with a cogwheel. Okay. But then if I want to go back and go to some other setting, then I have to go to home again. But then when you drill into the sound and then click on the cogwheel, then you get some other settings. But if I want to go back, there is no back button here. You have to press home. So you have this multi-layer that fills up the whole screen. This is very old-fashioned design that should not exist in cars in 2023. You should have a bigger screen and then have a menu on the left, where many people are used to having a menu on the left, or a tab, like a top tab something, and then you can tab between the settings like that, or tab between different things you want to do. That is way better usability. Yeah. But I mean, what can you do with the ID software? You can't do much. There's not much headroom to change things here, simply because the screen is too small. Yeah. So they just design the screens to be bigger, and then we come back to the whole thing again. I have to mention this. When people say, but touch screens are unsafe. Well, but is pressing a screen, pressing a button in the center console, a physical button in the center console, safer? Huh? Is it? because you have too many damn buttons there, and you actually have to look there so you don't press the wrong button by accident. And these buttons in the cars, they don't have those indentation or whatever you call it. Back to, by the way, I should mention it when I talk to the keyboard. You know, when you have a touch, when you are using the touch method on the keyboard, 102 key keyboard, whatever. Have you ever noticed that the F key and the, oh shit, what was it again? What key was it again? I have to see here. I have to bring up a square. Yeah, the F key, F and the J key, I think it was. F and the J key, they have a tiny little tab that pokes up, and you can feel it with your index finger, or the index finger, is that? You can feel it with the fingers, those two. So even if you're blindfolded, if you know roughly where the keyboard is, you get there with the keyboard with your hands, and you can feel those two things, and then you are aligned. That's like alignment pin for you. And then you know exactly, then you can type with touch method on the keyboard without looking at the keyboard. People who look at the keyboard, they haven't learned the method yet. So yeah, and then yeah, and also when I see the idea, when I see the, I should also mention this, by the way, since we already talk about ergonomics. In the ID bus here, at the bottom we have some haptic, it's like a touch button, not physical button, but the haptic, or it's not haptic even, but the touch button for changing volume and temperature and shit like that. The problem is that at daytime you can easily see those buttons for changing temperature. At night there is no back illumination. So then at night I keep pressing the wrong thing all the time. I try to increase temperature, I decrease temperature by accident. So they could have solved this if it was back illuminated, or at least if they had the top illumination. You know that many cars, like a BMW, well designed in BMW, there's a tiny little moonlight at the top of the cabin, lighting down on the center console. When you have a little bit of light, if you're driving at pitch dark, you can then see the contour of some buttons. That would have solved the problem. Or if there would be some indentation or something. But here, no. Just like also the swipe, the haptic keys on the steering wheel in the MEB cars and also the Mercedes, they are freaking horrible, man. Oh, you misclick all the time. I miss when I change speed on this ID bus. Many times I misclick and I accidentally press the change to change distance, following distance. And once you are in that mode, then it holds that. Then up down doesn't change speed anymore. It changes distance until a couple of seconds passes, and then it goes out of that mode. Yeah. So, but am I just an old fart complaining? No, it's based on experience. It's based on my bachelor degree, and it's based on 12 years of working in the computer industry. So I think I'm just gonna end now here, okay, before the video gets too long. But yes, I hope you guys enjoy my long rant and my video, and I hope you learn something from this. So I'm not trying to promote my personal opinions about this. I'm trying to make cars better. Yeah, just like I try to make my web pages or whatever better. And you can do that by using Squarespace. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. I watch Adam Ragusea nowadays, and suddenly he would just change topic and talk about his sponsor, Squarespace. Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. No, but anyway, I think that's gonna be it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, thank you for watching, and talk to you later.